Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked through the busy marketplace of New Haven Colony. The morning sun beat down on the metal roofs and canvas covers that protected the various alien merchants from the heat. He had just finished escorting a cargo shipment to the spaceport and was looking forward to a cold drink and some rest. The marketplace was always crowded with different species from across the galaxy. Tall, thin Vortan sold glowing crystals next to short, furry Keelans offering exotic spices. The air buzzed with dozens of languages and the constant hum of translation devices. Jake had been living on New Haven for 3 years now, working as a security contractor. He knew most of the regular merchants by sight, even if he could not pronounce their names. As he walked past a stall selling rare plants, he heard raised voices from a narrow alley between two buildings. Jake paused, listening carefully. One voice was high and scared, speaking in broken standard. The other voices were deeper, rougher, and definitely threatening. Jake had learned long ago to mind his own business in places like this. Trouble was common in frontier colonies, and getting involved usually meant more problems than solutions. But something about the frightened voice made him stop walking. It sounded young and desperate. He moved closer to the alley entrance and looked around. The corner. 3 large aliens had cornered a much smaller figure against the back wall. Jake recognized them as Korthani, a species known for their aggressive nature and criminal activities. They were big, muscular beings with gray-green skin and sharp teeth. The one in front wore expensive clothing and carried a plasma weapon. On his belt, the small figure they had trapped was a young alien girl with pale blue skin and silver markings on her arms and face. Jake had seen her species before. Thylorians were peaceful traders who rarely caused trouble. She looked terrified as she pressed herself against the wall, clutching something small against her chest. "Give us the amulet, little one," the lead Korthani said in a voice like grinding stone. "We know your mother had it when she died. Hand it over and we might let you walk away." "It is all I have left of her," the girl said, her voice shaking. "Please, it has no value to anyone else. It is just a memory." The Korthani leader laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the alley walls. "Memory? That little trinket contains more than memories, child. Our employer knows exactly what your mother hid inside it. Now give it to us, or we will take it from your cold body." Jake felt his jaw tighten. He had seen enough bullies in his 28 years, both on Earth and in space. 3 armed adults threatening one scared kid was not something he could ignore, no matter what species they were. He looked around quickly and spotted a metal pipe lying near a construction site. Jake picked it up, testing its weight. It was not much against plasma weapons, but it would have to do. He took a deep breath and stepped into the alley. "Hey," he called out loudly. "Is there a problem here?" All 4 aliens turned to look at him. The Korthani leader's small eyes narrowed as he sized up the human. Jake was tall and lean, with brown hair and the kind of build that came from years of physical work. He wore simple work clothes and boots, nothing fancy or threatening. "Walk away, human," the leader growled. "This does not concern your kind." "Actually, it does," Jake said, moving closer while keeping the pipe behind his back. "See, I work security for this colony. Threatening kids in alleys is exactly my business." The other 2 Korthani spread out slightly, trying to flank him. Jake noticed their movements and adjusted his position to keep them all in sight. His military training from years ago was coming back to him. "You are 1 human against 3 of us," the leader said, putting his hand on his weapon. "Are you sure you want to make this your fight?" "Pretty sure," Jake replied. He glanced at the scared girl, who was staring at him with wide, golden eyes. "Hey kid, what's your name?" "Zara," she whispered. "Nice to meet you, Zara. I'm Jake. Why don't you move behind me while these gentlemen and I have a little chat?" The lead Korthani snarled and reached for his plasma weapon. Jake was ready for it. He threw the metal pipe hard at the alien's gun hand, causing him to drop the weapon with a roar of pain. At the same time, Jake grabbed a small trash container and hurled it at the second Korthani, hitting him in the face. The third alien rushed at Jake with a metal club. Jake ducked under the swing and drove his shoulder into the alien's stomach, sending him stumbling backward into the alley wall. Years of loading cargo had given Jake strong shoulders and quick reflexes. "Run, Zara!" Jake shouted as he dodged. Another swing from the club-wielding Corthani. But instead of running away, the girl moved to where the leader had dropped his plasma weapon. She picked it up with both hands, pointing it shakily at the aliens. "Stay back," she said, her voice stronger now. "I know how to use this." The Corthani leader clutched his injured hand and glared at both of them. "This is not over, human. You have no idea what forces you are dealing with. That amulet belongs to our employer, and he will have it. Tell your employer he can make an appointment," Jake said, breathing hard. "Through proper channels." The three Corthani gathered themselves together and backed toward the alley entrance. "You have made a powerful enemy today," the leader said. "We will remember this." After they left, Jake turned to check on Zara. She was still holding the plasma weapon, but her hands were shaking badly. Jake gently took it from her and set it aside. "You okay?" he asked. Zara nodded slowly, then looked down at the small object she still clutched in her other hand. It was a simple pendant on a thin chain, nothing that looked particularly valuable to Jake's eyes. "They killed my mother for this," she said quietly. "And now they want to kill me too." Jake felt a cold anger settle in his stomach. "No," he said, firmly. "They're not going to hurt you, I promise." He looked around the alley, thinking quickly. The Corthani would be back, probably with more friends. Zara needed help, and Jake was apparently the only one willing to give it. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you somewhere safe. Then you can tell me what this is really about." As they walked out of the alley together, Jake knew his quiet life on New Haven Colony had just become much more complicated. But looking at the grateful expression on Zara's young face, he found he did not mind at all. Jake led Zara through the crowded marketplace toward the colony's medical center. The young Thailorian stayed close to his side, constantly looking over her shoulder. Her golden eyes darted nervously at every shadow and sound. The small amulet remained clutched tightly in her hand. The medical center was a clean, white building near the center of New Haven Colony. Jake had been there before for various work-related injuries. As they walked through the automatic doors, cool air washed over them, providing relief from the planet's heat. "Can I help you?" asked the receptionist, a friendly human woman with short red hair. "We need to see a doctor," Jake said. "The young lady here was attacked and might be hurt." "Of course. Dr. Amy Chen is available right now. Room 3, down, the hall." Dr. Chen was a small woman with kind eyes and gentle hands. She had been studying on New Haven for 2 years, researching the different alien species that lived and traded there. Jake had met her a few times at the colony's social gatherings. "What happened?" Dr. Chen asked as she examined a small cut on Zara's arm. Jake explained about the attack in the alley while Dr. Chen cleaned and bandaged Zara's injuries. The doctor's expression grew more serious as she listened. "3 Corthani threatened you." "For that pendant?" Dr. Chen asked, looking at the amulet Zara still held. "May I see it?" Zara hesitated, then slowly opened her hand. The amulet was about the size of a coin, made of some kind of dark metal with strange symbols carved into its surface. It hung from a delicate silver chain. "My mother gave this to me before she died," Zara said softly. "She told me it contained memories of our old home. I thought she meant it held pictures or recordings of our family." Dr. Chen studied the pendant carefully without touching it. "These symbols, they look like ancient Thailorian script. I've seen similar markings in my research. Your people are originally from the Andromeda sector, aren't you?" "Yes," Zara nodded. "But our homeworld was destroyed in a war long ago. My people have been scattered across the galaxy for over a century. We live wherever we can find welcome." Jake frowned. "If your homeworld is gone, why would anyone want an old pendant, Doctor?" Chen pulled out her tablet and began typing quickly. "Let me check something," she said. After a few minutes, her eyes widened. "Jake, I think this is much more serious than we thought." She turned the tablet so they could see the screen. It showed an article about missing Thailorian artifacts and a reward notice that made Jake whistle in surprise. "Someone is offering 50,000 credits for any authentic Thailorian navigation amulets," Dr. Chen read. These pendants supposedly contained quantum-encrypted star charts that could lead to hidden Thylorian colonies. Zara stared at the screen in shock. Hidden colonies? But I thought we were all scattered. According to this research, Dr. Chen continued, many Thylorian families escaped the war and established secret settlements throughout the galaxy. The locations were kept hidden to protect them from their enemies. The navigation data was stored in these amulets by the ship navigators. Jake was beginning to understand. So Zara's mother was one of these navigators? It's possible, Dr. Chen said. If that amulet really contains coordinates to Thylorian refugee colonies, it would be incredibly valuable. Not just for money, but for reuniting your people. Zara looked down at the pendant with new eyes. My mother never told me. She just said it would help me remember where I came from. She was probably trying to protect you, Jake said gently. The fewer people who knew what it really was, the safer you would be. Dr. Chen's tablet beeped with an incoming message. She read it, and her face went pale. Jake, we have a problem. I just received an alert from Colony Security. 3 Korthani have posted bounty notices all over the commercial district. They're offering 10,000 credits for information leading to a young Thylorian female carrying a family amulet. 10,000? Jake shook his head. That's enough money to make. A lot of people very interested in finding Zara. What am I going to do? Zara asked, her voice small and scared. I can't fight off an entire colony full of bounty hunters. Jake looked at the frightened girl and made a decision. He had gotten involved this far, and he was not the kind of person to abandon someone who needed help. You're not going to fight them, he said. We are. We? Zara and Dr. Chen said at the same time. That's right. Dr. Chen, you know more about Thylorian culture and history than anyone else on this colony. And I know how to handle myself in a fight. Together, we can keep Zara safe until we figure out what to do with that amulet. Dr. Chen looked uncertain. Jake, I'm a researcher, not a security expert. I study alien cultures in libraries, not combat situations. Sometimes studying something and living it are the same thing, Jake said. Besides, Zara needs people she can trust right now. How many of those do you think she has on New Haven? Zara looked back and forth between them. I don't want to put you in danger because of me. Maybe I should just give them the amulet. No, Jake said firmly. Those Korthani aren't just going to take your pendant and leave you alone. They already killed your mother. What makes you think they'll let you live as a witness? The room fell, silent as the reality of the situation sank in. Zara clutched the amulet tighter, and Jake could see tears forming in her golden eyes. My mother died protecting this, she whispered. She told me it was the key to finding our people again. If I give it up, her sacrifice meant nothing. Dr. Chen stood up and closed her tablet with a snap. Then we don't give it up. Jake's right. You need allies, and we're volunteering. Jake felt a surge of respect for the small doctor. All right then. First thing we need to do is get Zara somewhere. Safe. My apartment is in the residential sector. It's defensible and away from the main commercial areas. What about the bounty hunters? Zara asked. Let me worry about them, Jake said. I've dealt with their kind before. The trick is staying one step ahead and making it more trouble than it's worth to chase you. As they prepared to leave the medical center, Dr. Chen pulled Jake aside. Are you sure about this? The Korthani aren't just street thugs. They have connections to some very dangerous organizations. Jake looked back at Zara, who was carefully tucking the amulet under her shirt. The young alien looked so small and vulnerable, but there was a strength in her eyes that reminded him of soldiers he had known. Sometimes you have to do what's right even when it's not smart, he said. Besides, I've got a feeling that little girl is tougher than she looks. Dr. Chen smiled. You know, I think you might be right about that. Together, the 3 unlikely allies stepped out into the afternoon heat of New Haven Colony, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Commander Brix Korvac arrived on New Haven Colony 3 days after the marketplace incident. His ship, a sleek black cruiser designed for intimidation, landed at the private docking bay reserved for wealthy visitors. Korvac was larger than most. Korthani, with scars covering his gray-green skin and cybernetic implants replacing his left eye and arm. He had not come alone. 12 armed Korthani soldiers followed him down the ship's ramp, their weapons visible and their intentions clear. The colony's security forces watched nervously but did nothing to interfere. Technically, the Korthani had not broken any laws yet. Jake watched the arrival from the observation deck of the colony's communications tower. He had been keeping track of all incoming ships since the bounty notices appeared. Through his binoculars, he could see Korvac speaking with local crime bosses and information brokers. "This is bad," Jake muttered into his comm unit. "Amy, are you getting this?" Dr. Chen's voice crackled back through the device. "I see them. That's a full military squad, not just hired thugs. Jake, maybe we should reconsider our options." "No?" came Zara's voice over the comm. "I won't run anymore. My mother didn't run, and neither will I." Jake smiled despite the dangerous situation. Over the past 3 days, he had watched Zara grow from a scared girl into a determined young woman. She had been asking him to teach her how to fight and defend herself. Her natural grace and quick reflexes reminded him of the best soldiers he had served with. "All right," Jake said. "But we do this smart. Amy, what did you find out about the amulet?" "I've been analyzing the symbols with the colony's computer systems," Dr. Chen replied. "The encryption is incredibly sophisticated. It's not just star charts. There are communication frequencies, security codes, and what looks like genetic markers for Thylorian bloodlines." "Genetic markers?" Zara asked. "It means the amulet can identify legitimate Thylorian leaders," Amy explained. "This isn't just about finding hidden colonies. It's about proving who has the right to speak for your people." Jake understood immediately. So whoever controls that pendant could potentially claim leadership over all the scattered Thylorian communities. Exactly. And if someone like Korvac gets it, they could sell the location data to slavers, pirates, or worse. Through his binoculars, Jake watched Korvac distribute credits to various unsavory characters around the docking bay. Within minutes, the word would spread throughout the colony's underworld. The reward for finding Zara had just increased dramatically. "Time to move," Jake said. "Meet me at Maintenance Tunnel, 7 in 15 minutes. Jake had spent his 3 days on New Haven learning every hidden passage, service tunnel, and emergency exit in the colony. His military background had taught him to always know the terrain, especially when retreat might become necessary. The maintenance tunnels ran beneath the entire colony, carrying power lines, water pipes, and communication cables. They were hot, cramped, and smelled like recycled air, but they were also invisible to most people. Jake had already stashed supplies and equipment at key locations throughout the tunnel system. Amy and Zara were waiting for him at the designated meeting point. Dr. Chen carried a large backpack filled with medical supplies and research equipment. Zara had traded her colorful Thylorian clothing for plain work coveralls that would help her blend in with the colony's maintenance workers. "Any word from your contacts?" Jake asked Amy. "I reached out to the Thylorian Trade Council on Proxima Station," she said. "They're sending a representative, but it will take at least a week for them to arrive." "We might not have a week," Jake said. "Korvac has enough firepower to level half the colony if he wants to." "Then we give him a reason not to," Zara said quietly. Jake looked at her in surprise. "What do you mean?" "The amulet isn't just valuable because of what it contains," Zara explained. "It's valuable because it's authentic. If something happens to it, if it gets damaged or destroyed, then all that information is lost forever. You want to threaten to destroy it? I want to make it clear that the only way anyone gets this amulet intact is by negotiating with its rightful owner." Zara's golden eyes showed a determination that reminded Jake why her people had survived a century of exile. Amy nodded slowly. "It's actually a smart strategy. Archaeological artifacts are only valuable if they remain undamaged. Even Korvac wouldn't risk destroying something worth that much money." "All right," Jake said. "But first we need to stay alive long enough to negotiate. And that means staying ahead of his hunting parties." As if summoned by his words, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the tunnel behind them. Jake held up his hand for silence and listened carefully. At least 4 beings moving in military formation were heading in their direction. "This way," Jake whispered, leading them deeper into the tunnel system. For the next 6 hours they played a deadly game of hide-and-seek through the colony's underground passages. Jake used every trick he had learned in the military: false trails, noise distractions, and carefully placed obstacles to slow down their pursuers. The Korthani soldiers were well-trained and persistent, but they were also used to fighting in open spaces. The cramped tunnels negated many of their advantages, while Jake's knowledge of the terrain gave him the edge he needed. "How much farther?" Amy whispered, as they crawled through a particularly narrow section. "Almost there," Jake replied. "There's an emergency exit near the industrial sector. We can surface there and find a better place to make our stand." "Make our stand?" Zara asked. Jake stopped crawling and turned back to look at her. "Zara, we can't keep running forever. Eventually, we're going to have to fight." "I know," she said, simply. "I'm ready." Amy looked between them with growing concern. "Jake, she's just a kid. We can't ask her to fight trained soldiers." "Nobody's asking," Zara said firmly. "I'm volunteering. This is my heritage, my responsibility. And besides," she added with a small smile, "Jake has been teaching me a few things." Jake felt a surge of pride mixed with worry. Zara had indeed been learning quickly: how to move quietly, how to spot threats, how to use improvised weapons. But learning and doing were very different things. They reached the emergency exit as the sun was setting. Over New Haven Colony, Jake carefully checked the area before leading them out into the fading daylight. The industrial sector was mostly empty at this time of day, with only a few automated systems running. There, Jake pointed to a large warehouse with multiple exits and good sight lines. "We can set up a defensive position and force them to come to us on our terms." As they moved toward the warehouse, Zara suddenly grabbed Jake's arm. "Wait," she said. "I hear something." Jake listened and caught the distant sound of engines. Looking up, he saw 3 aircraft circling the colony at high altitude. Korvac had brought air support. "Looks like the commander is done playing games," Jake said grimly. "Good," Zara replied, surprising both her companions. "Neither are we." Jake looked at the determined young alien and the brave human doctor who had chosen to stand with them. Against all odds, he found himself smiling. "All right then," he said. "Let's show these Korthani what happens when they mess with our family." As the 3 unlikely allies prepared for the fight of their lives, Jake realized that somewhere along the way that's exactly what they had become: a family worth fighting for. The warehouse Jake had chosen was perfect for what he had in mind. It was an old mining equipment storage facility, filled with heavy machinery, power tools, and industrial materials. More importantly, it had multiple levels connected by metal, walkways, and enough hiding spots to confuse an army. "Amy, I need you to get to the control room on the 2nd level," Jake said as they entered the building. "The main power controls for this section of the colony run through there. Can you handle that?" Dr. Chen nodded, clutching her tablet. "I've been studying the colony's technical manuals. I think I can manage." "Zara, you're with me. We're going to prepare a few surprises for our guests." Jake had learned long ago that humans had one major advantage over most other species: creativity in desperate situations. While other beings relied on superior technology or natural abilities, humans could turn anything into a weapon and any environment into a fortress. He started with the overhead cranes that moved heavy equipment around the warehouse. Using his knowledge of mechanical systems, Jake rigged the control cables so they could be operated manually instead of electronically. This would let them drop multi-ton pieces of machinery on anyone who entered the main floor. "Zara, see those barrels of industrial coolant?" Jake pointed to a stack of metal containers near the back wall. "Help me move them to the walkway above the main entrance." Together they repositioned the barrel so they could be tipped over at a moment's notice. The coolant would create a slippery, choking cloud that would blind and confuse anyone caught in it. Next, Jake focused on the building's electrical systems. He had noticed that the warehouse used high-voltage power lines to run the heavy machinery. With some careful rewiring, He could turn the metal walkways and door handles into electric traps. "This is brilliant," Zara said as she watched him work. "You're turning their advantages into disadvantages." "That's the human way," Jake replied, stripping insulation from a power cable. "When you can't win with strength, you win with brains." Amy's voice came over their comm units. "Jake, I'm seeing movement on the perimeter sensors. Looks like they've surrounded the building." "How many?" Jake asked as he connected the power cable to a metal railing. "At least 8 heat signatures. Probably more. And Jake, there's something else. I'm picking up energy readings that suggest they have heavy weapons." Jake felt his stomach tighten. Heavy weapons could punch through the warehouse walls like paper. He needed to level the playing field quickly. "Amy, can you access the colony's atmospheric controls from there?" "Yes. Why?" "In about 5 minutes. I want you to pump all the oxygen out of this building and replace it with nitrogen. Can you do that?" There was a pause. "That would make it hard for us to breathe, too." Jake pulled 3 breathing masks from an emergency supply locker. "That's what these are for. But Corthani physiology can't handle pure nitrogen for more than a few minutes. It'll give us a serious advantage." He handed masks to Amy and Zara, then continued setting up his traps. Using mining explosives found in a locked cabinet, Jake created small charges that could be triggered remotely. He placed them at key structural points throughout the building. "You're not going to bring the whole warehouse down on us, are you?" Zara asked nervously. "Not the whole thing," Jake said with a grin. "Just the parts I want to fall down." The sound of vehicles outside grew louder. Through the windows, they could see Corthani soldiers taking positions around the building. Commander Korvac's voice boomed through a loudspeaker. "Human, we know you are in there with the Thylorian female. Send her out with the amulet, and we will allow you to live." Jake activated his comm unit and broadcast on an open frequency so everyone in the area could hear. "Counteroffer, Korvac, you and your boys pack up and leave the colony, and I won't have to embarrass you in front of your troops." Harsh laughter came back through the speaker. "You are one human with improvised weapons against a full military squad. What could you possibly do to us?" "Guess you're about to find out," Jake replied. He looked at Amy and Zara. "Masks on. It's showtime." Amy activated the atmospheric controls just as the first Corthani soldiers breached the main entrance. They came in fast and aggressive, exactly as Jake had expected. The first 2 through the door triggered his electric trap, sending them convulsing to the floor. The soldiers behind them hesitated, confused by what had happened to their comrades. That moment of uncertainty cost them dearly. Zara triggered the coolant barrels, sending a cascade of slippery liquid and choking vapor down on the entrance area. "What is this?" one of the Corthani shouted as they struggled to maintain their footing. "Welcome to human warfare," Jake muttered as he activated the first crane. A massive piece of mining equipment swung down from above, forcing the soldiers to scramble for cover. The Corthani were tough and well-trained, but they had never faced anything like this. Every step forward led to another trap, another unexpected hazard. The building itself seemed to be fighting against them. Commander Korvac's voice crackled over their comm units. "What is your status? Report." "Sir, the human has turned the entire building into a weapon," came the shaky reply. "We can't advance without taking casualties." "Then blast through the walls." "Sir, the building contains volatile chemicals and mining explosives. One wrong shot could level half the district." Jake smiled behind his breathing mask. Korvac was learning what every human soldier knew. Sometimes the best weapon was your enemy's own fear of collateral damage. Through the warehouse windows, Jake could see more Corthani soldiers trying to find alternative entrances. He had prepared for that, too. Using the building's internal communication system, he began playing a recording of Zara's voice throughout the facility. "Attention, Corthani forces," the recording said. "This is Zara Velthari, bearer of the Navigator's Amulet. I am prepared to destroy this artifact, rather than let it fall into criminal hands. Any hostile action will result in the permanent loss of the information you seek." The effect was immediate. The soldiers outside stopped advancing and began talking rapidly into their comm units. Jake could imagine the frantic conversations as Korvac weighed his options. Amy, status report, Jake called softly. Nitrogen levels are at maximum. The Corthani, inside, are already showing signs of respiratory distress. But Jake, I'm reading massive energy buildup from their ship. I think they're preparing to use some kind of orbital weapon. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. An orbital strike would vaporize the entire warehouse and everyone in it. Korvac was apparently willing to risk destroying the amulet rather than admit defeat to a single human. Time for Plan B, Jake said. He activated his final surprise, explosive charges placed throughout the building's support structure, but instead of bringing the building down, the carefully placed charges opened up holes in the warehouse walls at strategic points. Suddenly, the Corthani soldiers who had been trapped inside had multiple escape routes. "Zara now!" Jake shouted. The young Thylorian stepped into view of one of the new openings, holding her mother's amulet high above her head. For a moment, she looked exactly like what she was, the last heir to an ancient legacy. "I am Zara Velthari, daughter of Navigator Lyra Velthari," she called out in a voice that carried across the entire district. "This amulet belongs to the Thylorian people, not to criminals and murderers. Any being who helps protect it will be rewarded. Any being who tries to steal it will face the consequences." Jake watched through his scope as Corthani soldiers began looking at each other uncertainly. They had signed up to fight one human and steal from a girl. They had not expected to face a building that fought back and a legitimate heir making formal declarations of ownership. Commander Korvac's voice came over the loudspeaker again, but this time it sounded less confident. "You cannot hide forever, human. Eventually you will run out of tricks." Jake activated his comm unit one more time. "Maybe," he said calmly. "But I've got a lot more tricks than you've got soldiers. Want to find out how many?" The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Corthani vehicles starting their engines. Through the warehouse windows, Jake could see soldiers retreating to defensive positions rather than advancing. "I don't think they expected this much trouble," Zara said, lowering the amulet. "They expected to intimidate a scared kid and an untrained civilian," Jake replied. "They got a Thylorian heir and a very annoyed human instead." Amy's voice came over the comm. "Jake, I'm getting messages from colony security. Apparently our little light show has attracted some attention." Official attention. Jake looked out at the Corthani forces, who were now clearly reconsidering their strategy. For the first time since this whole mess started, he allowed himself to hope they might actually survive. "Sometimes," he said to Zara, "the best way to win a fight is to make your enemy think twice about wanting to fight at all." The standoff lasted through the night. Jake, Amy, and Zara took turns keeping watch while Commander Korvac's forces maintained their positions around the warehouse. Neither side wanted to make the first move that might trigger a larger conflict. So, dawn broke over New Haven Colony. Jake noticed something that made him smile. Small groups of civilians had begun gathering at the edges of the industrial district. Word had spread throughout the colony about the young alien girl making a stand against criminal bullies, and people were coming to see what would happen. "Amy, are you getting readings on those new arrivals?" Jake asked through his comm unit. "Yes, and it's interesting. I'm seeing humans, Vortons, Keelans, even some Thylorian traders who happen to be in port. It looks like half the colony is out there." Jake understood what was happening. For too long, the people of New Haven had accepted that criminals like the Corthani could do whatever they wanted. But seeing one human and a young alien girl refuse to back down had reminded them that sometimes you have to stand up for what's right. Commander Korvac apparently noticed the growing crowd too. His voice came over the loudspeaker again, but this time it was directed at the civilians. "Disperse immediately. This is a private business matter that does not concern you." A voice called back from the crowd. Jake recognized it as Marcus Webb, who ran a small restaurant in the commercial district. "Seems to me that threatening kids in our colony makes it our business." Other voices joined in, creating a chorus of agreement. Jake watched through his scope as Korvac's soldiers began looking nervous. Fighting 3 people in a warehouse was one thing. Fighting an entire angry colony was something else entirely. "Zara," Jake said, "I think it's time for you to make another speech." The young Thylorian had been quiet for most of the night, studying the amulet and thinking about everything that had happened. When she looked up at Jake, Her golden eyes held a new confidence. "I know what I want to say," she said simply. Zara walked to the main opening in the warehouse wall, where she could be seen by everyone. The Korthani soldiers, the growing crowd of civilians, and the colony security forces who had finally arrived on the scene. "My name is Zara Velthari," she began, her young voice carrying clearly in the morning air. "3 days ago, criminals tried to steal my mother's amulet from me. One human, Jake Morrison, chose to help me when no one else would." She held up the pendant so everyone could see it. "This amulet contains the locations of Thylorian refugee colonies scattered throughout the galaxy. My people have been separated for over a century, unable to find each other, unable to reunite as a community." Jake watched the crowd's reaction. Many of them knew what it was like to be far from home, to be separated from family and friends. Zara's story was resonating with them. "Commander Korvac wants to steal this amulet so he can sell my people's locations to slavers and pirates," Zara continued, her voice growing stronger. "He thinks that because I am young and alone, I cannot stop him." She paused, looking directly at the Korthani commander. "He is wrong." Korvac stepped forward, his cybernetic eye glowing red with anger. "Enough speeches, child. You are surrounded and outnumbered. Surrender the amulet now, or we will take it from your corpse." The crowd of civilians stirred angrily at the threat, but Zara held up her hand for silence. When she spoke again, her voice had the authority of someone far older than her years. "I am the daughter of Navigator Lyra Velthari, keeper of the Star Roads, guardian of the scattered fleets. By the ancient laws of my people, I claim the right of heritage trial." Jake had no idea what that meant, but from the way Amy sucked in her breath, he knew it was significant. "Heritage trial?" Korvac laughed harshly. "Ancient ceremonies have no power here, girl." "Actually, they do," came a new voice. Everyone turned to see a tall, elegant figure walking through the crowd. Jake had never seen one before, but he knew immediately that this was a Thylorian elder. The silver markings on her skin were more complex than Zara's, and she moved with the dignity of someone who had seen many years. "I am Elder Vera Kolthani of the Thylorian Trade Council," the newcomer announced. "I came as quickly as I could when I heard of Navigator Lyra's daughter." Korvac's confident expression faltered slightly. The Trade Council had significant political influence throughout this sector of space. "Elder Kolthani," Zara said formally, "I invoke the right of heritage trial to determine the rightful disposition of my mother's amulet." The elder studied Zara carefully, then nodded. "The right is acknowledged. Who stands as your champion?" Without hesitation, Zara pointed at Jake. "Jake Morrison of Earth. He has proven his worth by standing with me when others would not." Jake felt every eye in the district turn toward him. He had not expected this, but he was not about to let Zara down now. "I accept," he said, stepping up beside her. Commander Korvac snarled. "This is ridiculous. I will not participate in primitive rituals." "Then you forfeit any claim to the amulet," Elder Kolthani said calmly. "Under galactic salvage law, items of cultural significance can only be claimed through proper legal channels or traditional trials of worthiness." "Legal channels?" Korvac spat. "I have the firepower to take what I want." "Not anymore, you don't," came another new voice. 3 ships descended from the sky, sleek vessels bearing the markings of the Galactic Peacekeeping Force. Jake recognized the lead ship as a heavy cruiser, more than capable of dealing with Korvac's soldiers. "Captain Lisa." Santos emerged from the lead ship, her blue uniform crisp and her expression stern. "Commander Korvac, you are in violation of 17 different interstellar laws. Stand down immediately." Jake watched as Korvac's confidence finally cracked. He was trapped between an angry crowd, legitimate authorities, and the realization that his easy target had become anything but easy. "This is not over," Korvac said, but he was already signaling his troops to retreat. "Actually, it is," Elder Kolthani said firmly. "Zara Velthari has claimed her inheritance under ancient law, defended by a champion who has proven his courage and honor. The amulet belongs to her and her people. As the Korthani ships lifted off and departed New Haven Colony, the crowd of civilians broke into cheers. Jake found himself surrounded by people wanting to shake his hand and congratulate him on standing up to the bullies. "Jake," Zara said quietly, pulling him aside. "Thank you. For everything." "Hey, that's what friends do," Jake replied. "Besides, I think your people are going to need all the help they can get reuniting their scattered communities." Elder Kolthani approached them with Amy close behind. "Mr. Morrison, the Thylorian Trade Council would like to offer you a position as a liaison and security advisor. Your actions here have shown exactly the kind of character we need." Jake looked at Zara, who was smiling broadly. "What do you think? Want to help your people find their way home?" "I would be honored," Zara said, "but only if Jake comes with us. I have a feeling we'll need someone who knows how to turn impossible situations into victories." Jake laughed. "Well, when you put it like that, how can I say no?" As the three friends walked away from the warehouse together, Jake reflected on how much his life had changed in just a few days. He had come to New Haven Colony looking for quiet, work, and simple living. Instead, he had found something much more valuable, a purpose worth fighting for and friends worth protecting. Behind them, the crowd was already dispersing, but Jake could hear them talking excitedly about what they had witnessed. The story would spread throughout the colony and beyond. The story of how one human refused to let bullies prey on the innocent, and how that simple act of courage had changed everything. Dr. Amy Chen fell into step beside them. "So, what's next?" Zara held up her mother's amulet, which seemed to gleam brighter in the morning sunlight. "Now we find our people and bring them home." Jake looked at his two companions, a brilliant human scientist and a brave young alien with the heart of a leader. Together they were going to reunite a scattered civilization and probably have a dozen more adventures along the way. "Sounds like a plan," he said. "Let's go make some history." As they walked toward the spaceport where Elder Kolthani's ship waited, Jake realized that sometimes the most important battles weren't won with superior firepower or advanced technology. Sometimes they were won by ordinary people who simply refused to give up, refused to walk away, and refused to let evil triumph over good. It was a very human way of thinking, and Jake was proud to share it with the galaxy.